Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to do another quick test at 8 feet of ball flight. And the reason why I want to do this is because in the previous videos at 8 and 9 feet of ball flight, we were on a different firmware version. We actually updated it to the latest firmware version for the SC4 Pro device before we did the 10-foot ball test. Now, if you saw that video, you saw that in the 10-foot ball test, we actually did way worse as far as accuracy goes than we did in the 8 and the 9-foot test. And so since that is very unusual for a radar-based launch monitor to give it more ball flight and it actually get worse as far as accuracy goes, I want to kind of rule out the fact, is it bad firmware or is it just that distance that we were hitting at? So in today's video, we're going to go back in and we're going to test again at 8 feet on that same firmware that we did at 10 feet. All right, and so real quick, kind of like what I always mention and always recommend, like if we go in here, like I showed you before, the update version, if we go check for an update before we start each time, we are on the current version of the app and we are still on that newest version of basically 1.28006 firmware on the actual device. And that's the same firmware we did the 10-foot ball test at. All right, so real quick, we're going to launch into practice. We'll get back into our setup here. One of the things that I've kind of found with this, and I don't know if anybody else has kind of noticed this, when you launch into practice, like whenever you set your bottom row down here of the stats you want displayed, it doesn't always stick. It kind of reverts back to almost kind of a default configuration. But if we quickly go in here, we go to display items, we can see that they're still set the way that I've had them before. So all I got to do is hit save. And then now we've got matching settings to what we see on the foresight side. So because we are retesting, this is kind of a repeat. I am going to try to get through this as fast as possible, and then we can review the data at the end. All right, so for the setup in the sim today, we've gone back to our 8-foot setup. So down on the floor, you'll see the red T's. They mark out their laser measure to the impact screen at 8 feet. And then we've got the SC4 Pro set up 13 feet laser measure to the impact screen, giving us that 5-foot difference between the ball hitting location and where the device sits. So just like in the previous videos, we're going to hit 3 pitching wedges, 3 7-irons, and 3 drivers at this distance, and then we'll compare the data at the end. I will try to hit 2 draws with the first 2 shots, and then we'll try to hit a fade basically on the third and final shot of each club. So shot 1, looks like we got a little bit of a mismatch on shot shape here. We've got a push draw on the foresight side. We've got basically a push slight fade on the SC4 side. So unfortunately, we did not match that one. Another draw here. Both caught it correctly, starting slightly to the right of center, but unfortunately, we've got a more significant draw on the foresight side, and we've got a complete opposite read. Again, it looks like on the SC4 where it's reading it as a fade. All right, so here's shot 3 with the pitching wedge. We're going to try to hit a fade or a little bit of a cut here. So yeah, we basically started it left. It had 50 left spin on the foresight side, so we really didn't get any kind of fade spin on this. The SC4 did read it as a fade with it starting to the left. So again, I would probably say on this one, even though the first 2 were mismatches, I'd say this one's probably about average because it did start off correctly and there wasn't a ton of spin on the foresight. And I wouldn't say there's a lot of right movement either with 500 right spin on the SC4. So I'd say this is probably like an average is what I'd qualify this shot shape on this one. So that's the 3 shots with a pitching wedge. Just quickly looking at those shots, I don't really think we see improvement here from our previous test at 8 feet. So this truly might be just a bad firmware version. So now we're going to step up to 7-iron and hit 3 shots real quick. That one was fat. So shot 1 was a mismatch. Let's try for shot 2 here. All right, so 7-iron shot 1 didn't match, but 7-iron shot 2 looks like it matched. So here on shot number 3, let's try to hit a fade. We just picked up a lot more right spin on the foresight side. So I would say this is probably more of an average. It just did not fade as much knows we needed it to really qualify it as kind of a match shot shape here. All right, so now we're going to step up to driver and hit 3. Like I said, we'll try to hit the 2 draws and a fade. These are our first driver swings of the day. And we can see, I mean, that was a really poor contact shot. I mean, we had really low spin on the foresight side, so that ball really struggled to stay in the air. So that's why we got kind of a really large gap number here in carry distance between the two devices. All right, so that one was kind of low on the face. I kind of mentioned this in the past. A lot of times, if the device really can't differentiate between the club head as it follows the path of the ball a little bit, it makes it a little bit harder for it to see. So I think that's kind of why we ended up with a no read here on the SC4. So let's try to hit that draw one more time here, get a comparable shot. All right, we can kind of see that both the devices have it almost kind of taking off straight. I mean, the Foresight was just barely to the right, and the SC4 was barely to the left on this one. We had a lot more left draw spin on the Foresight side of things, and we have barely any draw on the SC4. So I would have to say this one's probably, I would categorize it more as average shot shape match, because I really think the SC4 is just kind of showing us a straight ball flight here. All right, so here on the third one, we're going to try to hit a fade. All right, so I do feel like we weren't missing as many shots on the SC4 with the previous firmware, so that might be something that's just also kind of going to be a problem or an issue here with the new firmware. Now, granted, we are just at 8 feet of ball flight. All right, this is probably going to be, as far as shot shape and stuff, our closest driver. As we've seen, both of these read really, honestly, very little spin. The SC4, we've got 47 left, and on the Foresight, we've got 26 right. I would qualify this as kind of a matched shot shape here. They're both pretty much just straight ball flights. All right, so now that we've hit all the shots, we've got 3 comparable shots between the devices on all 3 clubs. We're gonna, jump into the spreadsheet and take a look and see how close this actually was, see if it improved with this new firmware over what our previous 8-foot test was, or if it actually got worse. All right, so yeah, I kind of got the feeling as we were hitting these shots and going through it that this doesn't seem as accurate as it was before in our previous 8-foot test. And as we quickly go through the clubs here, we're going to kind of see that, I believe. So looking here at the pitching wedge, we can see that it basically ball speed was good, just like it was on the previous test, but everything else was kind of worse than it was before. So that led us to an overall average shot accuracy score of 1.75 on this new test, whereas on the old one at 8 feet, we actually averaged 3.50. The same kind of continues with a 7-iron. We had a lot better results in the original test. We got a lot more red, I feel like, in this new one that we just did, which led us to a shot average accuracy score of 1.50 on the 3 shots, whereas we were at a 3.42 on the previous 8-foot test. And then the only anomaly here in this new test was actually driver. We see a lot more green here, and overall it did get better. I would say that the 2.33 overall average on the 3 shots, though, still needs quite a bit of improvement, but it really wasn't hard to beat the low bar that we had in the original 8-foot test, because that one was really, really bad. I mean, everything was pretty much red except for 2 ball speed readings on 2 of those shots. So to beat the 0.83 that we had in the original 8-foot test didn't obviously take a whole lot. So we did come out with a 2.33. And then, like I was just saying, with driver being the highest, if we take a look between this test we just did on the left and the old 8-foot test we did on the right, basically this new test lost pitching wedge and 7-iron by a lot. And then driver was the only real positive that we had with the new test, but that still gave us an overall average accuracy score for all shots of 1.86, which was almost 3/4 of a point completely behind the original 8-foot test we did. All right, so I think that kind of validates kind of what I was feeling when we were doing the test. I feel like this new firmware it felt really odd that we got worse results after I updated the device and we moved it back to 10 feet of ball flight. So I don't think it was the actual distance, because usually with radar devices, the more ball flight you give it, the better results you get. So that was kind of odd and stuck out to me. So that's why I kind of wanted to retest at 8 and 9 feet, just to verify maybe that this new firmware running on the device is not good. It's not a good version. So if you haven't updated your device yet, I would probably tell you to hold off until they at least can release another update, because this one is not one you probably want to go to. Now, we've seen worse results with the 8 foot test. Going back and doing that, I am going to basically do this same test at 9 feet, and we're going to verify our results against the old 9 foot test that we have, just to make sure that this is kind of bad firmware on the device. All right, so that is going to do it for the video today, guys. If you found anything helpful or like the content in this video, make sure to give the video a like. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and help the channel out and go ahead and do so. If you are subscribed, I do appreciate you guys' support. Up on the channel next, we are going to redo the 9 foot test, just so that we can maybe completely verify that this firmware that is now running on the SC4 is a worse version than what we previously had. All right, I want to thank y'all again for watching the video. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.